What are some of the biggest problems going on right now with ICOs? I have three specifically that I have in mind that I think are really important to consider when it comes down to ICOs and how you can be aware of those three distinct problems. Granted, there's probably quite a bit more. I would definitely be interested after you watch this video to hear your take on the positives and negatives of ICOs, but what are the three distinct problems that I have in my mind going on in regards to ICOs and specifically from an investment or participation standpoint? So my name is Rob from Crypto Bobby. If you are new here, I do daily recorded videos on the subject of cryptocurrencies as well as crypto happy hour, where I just do kind of a YouTube live to hang out with you guys, talk as much as possible. And if you've been here for a while, you might notice that this video is a little bit different than the previous. It's just my ugly mug on the screen right now. The reason for that being is I actually just got a new camera. So my old camera is basically this little crappy webcam and then this microphone over there. Right now for me, this is a brand new DSLR camera, so I was just kind of excited to use this thing, quite frankly, and wanted to get something out as quick as possible. If the volume isn't as good on this, it might not be. I'm still getting used to the tech here, but just so you guys are aware, I'm trying to kind of invest as much as possible in technology, in the quality of this channel to make this as good as possible for you guys. So quick thought getting into it. But now let's kind of hop into the actual discussion around the three biggest problems in my mind on ICOs. So when we are getting into things, the first thing I think is just the overall volume of ICOs. Like, how many ICOs have happened in the past days, weeks, months? An incredible number. It's getting harder and harder to keep up with the volume of ICOs, which is making it difficult for investors to do their research. It makes it harder. There's probably there's multiple ICOs a day going on. Even for myself personally, just some random dude having a YouTube channel that talks about cryptocurrencies, I get emails every single day, multiple times a day, about so-and-so's ICO coming up. Can you help me with this? Can you do this? Can you do that? What are your thoughts on this ICO? It's really tough with the sheer volume of ICOs that are happening, and it's tough to do your research. That is a really critically important thing if you are going to participate in an ICO, and granted, this is not investment advice at all. Nothing on this channel ever is specific investment advice, but this isn't investment advice. But if you are going to invest or participate in a token sale, you want to do your research. You are putting your hard-earned money into something. You want to be able to do your research. It's tough to do your research when there's 50 bajillion ICOs happening. It's freaking hard. So that's something that you want to be aware of and you want to think about. And that's an important distinction there for sure. Now, in addition to just the sheer volume of ICOs, one of the kind of big things that's going on that's happening is traditionally in the past, a lot of these ICOs were just, you would go into these ICOs would happen, you would just basically send money to an ETH contract and it would send that stuff back to you, and through a smart contract, and bingo bango, you were done. Now there are KYC requirements, there are country restrictions, there are a lot of things to keep in mind, but the biggest thing, one of the biggest in my opinion, is the whitelist. For example, right now, today, as we're recording this, it's September 30th. Let's say, just for example, XYZ token is happening on October 20th. XYZ token might be, or the ICO is happening on October 20th. The ICO might be happening on October 20th, but the whitelist starts on October 1st. The whitelist starts tomorrow, and the whitelist happens for 3 or 4 days, and if you don't participate in that whitelist, if you don't basically explicitly say your intent to participate in the ICO through the whitelist, participate in the required KYC, live in the desired countries, then you can't participate in the ICO. And a lot of the most in-demand ICOs have some level of a whitelist, and if you miss out on them, then you can't get in. So not only is there a massive amount of research that you need to do to keep up with these ICOs, but in addition to that, you also need to be about a month to 2 months ahead of the game when it comes to ICOs, because if you're missing out on, you can easily miss out on a really good ICO if you miss on the whitelist. So that is the second thing, is you really need to be ahead of the game, not only researching the volume, but you need to be ahead of the game, because if you're not ahead of the game, guess what? You miss out on some of the best ICOs, you don't participate in those, and then you're screwed. So that's the second point in my opinion. And then the third point is, and this is a really important distinction, it's taking a lot longer to get listed on exchanges. It's taking a lot longer. And the reason for that is pretty simple. You know, when you look at China right now, you look at, as of recently, South Korea banning domestic ICOs. So you look at China, they started their crypto blow up with an ICO outright ban. All those ICOs actually had to return their money to, return the money to investors, things like that, to basically stay out of regulatory hands. For me personally, I'm in the US. The big thing in the US is the Securities and Exchange Commission. The Securities and Exchange Commission came out and ruled that the DAO, one of the initial ICOs, really, that was a massive money raise, over $100 million. It was hacked. It led to the creation of Ethereum Classic, or the hard fork between Ethereum Classic and Ethereum, a whole big thing. But essentially, when it comes down to it, the US Securities and Exchange Commission came out and said, if something, an ICO, the DAO, could be considered a security, and ICO tokens can be considered, some can be considered securities if they don't pass the, if they don't pass the Howey test, and if they don't pass, or if they fulfill the needs of the Howey test, essentially. And what the three really main places to get pinched when it comes to potentially participating in security-related acts with ICOs are the actual companies themselves, the exchanges, and the investors. Now, in my opinion, the investors are typically going to be the hardest people to crack down on in a lot of cases, because oftentimes you're talking about 10, 15, 20,000 people that might be participating in an ICO, and then after the ICO it gets dispersed even more. So they might be a little bit harder to kind of crack down on. The easiest thing to do is to go after the exchanges that are listing these tokens. The easiest thing for the SEC to do in the future would be to say, hey, Bittrex, you listed XYZ token. That is a security. You need to delist that. You need to do whatever with us, and you need to make sure that, and you're probably going to pay a fine too, or something like that, to Bittrex or to Poloniex or to any international exchange if this is an international conversation. But for the purposes of just this conversation, I'm talking about the US. So ICO tokens are now, it's taking Bittrex, it's taking Poloniex a lot longer to list tokens, because they don't want the SEC to say, hey, this was a security, and now we're going to come to you, Bittrex, and you are the one in trouble. You didn't create the token, but you're listing it. Now you're responsible and you're liable for that. So Bittrex is doing longer due diligence, I think, most likely. Poloniex is doing longer due diligence. Companies internationally, centralized exchanges are doing longer due diligence. So when these centralized exchanges are doing more due diligence, what happens? Decentralized exchanges come out, and places like Ether Delta are, things like Ether Delta, there's Kyber Network that's trying to be a decentralized exchange, 0x, whatever it might be. Ether Delta is really the only fully functioning solid one, or one of the fully functioning solid ones in place that has a decent amount of volume. But the problem is Ether Delta isn't enough really to support long mainstream interest in a cryptocurrency. So let's use the example of Moneta. I participated in the ICO. It's basically it's on a couple very small exchanges right now, but the biggest one really for the most part being Ether Delta. I've talked to a couple guys in New York, and they call it the Ether Delta graveyard, because there's that time between when your ICO, your tokens become transferable, and when they actually hit a legitimate exchange. It's the Ether Delta graveyard, because after a while, there's the initial spike of interest, you get a bunch of volume, or maybe a couple $1 million of daily volume on Ether Delta, but there goes a while where a lot of new people that might be watching this video, you might not be comfortable trading on Ether Delta, because you have to move your ETH in there, and then you have to move it into a smart contract, and then you have to manually do the order book, blah, blah, blah. That is an important distinction, that the longer it takes a crypto to get listed on a big exchange, the smaller the volume is for a longer drawn out period of time, the less interest there is in that cryptocurrency, the more it can be replaced by something else, in my opinion. Granted, the best the cream will rise to the top eventually, but it's really hurting a lot of these recent ICOs that might be considered good projects in the meantime. So that's something you certainly want to, think about moving forward. Now, when it comes down to it, I know I mentioned 3 different problems, but you can still make a ton of money in ICOs. Am I against participating in ICOs? Not at all. Not at all. But you have to be extremely selective moving forward, because there are so many ICOs that people are basically getting ICO fatigue. They're getting ADD with these cryptocurrencies. Do I want to put it here? Do I want to put it there? Do I want to, let it ride here? Whatever. There's ICO fatigue. There's basically ICO ADD. There's crypto ADD. There's all this stuff happening right now. So you really want to be very selective where you put your hard-earned money when it comes to an ICO. And I try to do that as much as possible for myself personally. You want to do that for yourself as well. But the window is back in June, back in July. You could put your money in any no-name. There were a lot of ICOs that you could literally put your money in some shit ICO and it would pop out 5x return on investment. Now the window is closing and closing and closing, and the best ICOs are starting to move up, and I think the worst ICOs are starting to fail, which is somewhat of a good thing, because you don't want to invest in scam coins. You don't want to invest in some crap project. You want to invest in what's actually going to turn into a realistic thing. So that's something you do want to be aware of, in my opinion, is you want to really understand the best ICOs. You have to do your research, but it's very difficult right now with the overall volume of those ICOs, and having to be ahead of the game with those whitelists, which I said is kind of the second problem there as well. And then trying to predict which ICO tokens will actually have a realistic chance of escaping the Ether Delta graveyard and getting onto getting onto Bittrex or Poloniex or whatever it is internationally that you use and leverage. I know there's a lot of big exchanges out there. So that's my opinions on some of the main problems with ICOs and some of the things you really want to consider when it comes to putting your hard-earned money into an ICO. I mean, there's a lot of other issues. There's a lot of other things that you can certainly concern yourself with, but those were a couple things that I thought were really interesting. And again, if you are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. My name is Rob from Crypto Bobby. I hope you enjoyed the overall video. Sorry for making you look at my ugly mug today, but I was so excited about having this new camera. And if the audio quality isn't up to par, I'll have to explore that and make sure that everything is good to go in the near future there. But again, my name is Rob from Crypto Bobby. I appreciate your time. Hit that subscribe button if you are new. If you've been here, if you've been a subscriber, hit the like button. Help me get this out to as many people as possible. Thank you so much for your time. Rob from Crypto Bobby signing out. Peace.